Welcome back to a bit gaming and a little history video. Back, when I was a kid and I was reading about Alexander the Great's campaigns and the Macedonian Phalanx, one of the ancient historians mentioned that the Macedonian Phalanx had 16 ranks, whereas the standard for other armies for their kind of main battle line was 8 ranks, and it always confused me. It's confused me for many years how they could manage that if it's a mountainous terrain, mountainous country, but didn't have a massive advantage in numbers. So how could they have their sort of regiments in 16 ranks and the others have them in 8 without them being massively kind of outflanked? And it was messing around with these figures, these ancient armies, which finally kind of gave me the idea of what it was. Because if you think of the standard sort of army of that time, I think the general pattern is going to be similar to the Romans with their legions. If you've got 1,200 velites at the front, skirmishers, 1,200 principes, 1,200 hastati, and 600 triarii at the back. So you're looking at roughly 30% of your fighters, skirmishers in front. These are guys, and the sort of the general pattern is that it's based on kind of class or wealth. Your top guys have got your fancy bronze armor, and they're at the front, and then your next few ranks are guys with the linothorax armor, the linen armor, and then your kind of bottom third, these guys got no armour at all, more or less, and just a bit of a rubbish shield and some javelins, and they're out the front throwing javelins. And that's about a third of them. So that's my standard for my my regiment. It's on that basis. You've got basically three rows. You've got your skirmishers out the front and your sort of mainline infantry in the ranks up behind. And in terms of the numbers of figures, to say, going by the Roman pattern, I'm assuming that the actual number of skirmishers, is similar to a kind of row of bases on the other side. So these skirmishers are just 6 figures, but I think assuming the Roman pattern was the kind of standard for the proportions, then you could actually have the same number, 10 to 12 figures as the skirmishers. I just do them in 3 bases of 2 just to kind of reflect their kind of melee potential. But assuming that the skirmishers had the same number of figures as one of the rows at the back, so it's like 10 to 12 figures. But these guys, although they're the skirmishers, they're useful in certain cases, like you advance in front of the army and capture a terrain or something, or or just before a battle, they're out the front guarding the main force from getting ambushed and night attacks and all that sort of jazz. But in the battle itself, they're not that useful really. They act as a screen for your main battle line. But as soon as the fighting comes up close, these guys have to run to the back, and then the main battle is your heavy guys with the armour. So that's the standard for most of the armies that that are around at the time. Maybe somewhere like 30% to a third of their fighters are just skirmishers at the front who have to run to the back when the 2 battle lines get close, and then it's these guys who do all the fighting. So that's the standard pattern, and I think this might be common knowledge. I don't know, because I read these books years ago. For all I know, this is what's normal now when they're in history books. That's they say that this is how it was done. So I don't know, but this is just my little take that I came up on my own, which to me anyway, it kind of explains how it was and how they had such a great advantage once they figured this out. Because I think the Macedonian answer to it all was you take those guys who are at the front with their javelins, and they couldn't fight in the main battle line because they didn't have any armour. armour, shields, helmets, So they weren't much use. They're used in the skirmishing phase, but not much use afterwards. And so what I think the Macedonians did was, instead of having them at the front with javelins, they put them at the back with pike. Because at the back, obviously, the lack of armour is less of a problem, and then they've got their long pikes, so they can still help. And what that means is, as they can, these kind of like closed up on each other, and the skirmishers on the Greek side had to, or the other army had to retreat round the back. You end up with, it's basically got a ratio, odds of 3 to 2, because a third of their fighters are now at the back, not being any use. So they're sitting there not being any use, and then these guys now have got a odds ratio of 3 to 2. So you've got the fancy guys with the nice bronze armour at the front, and linothorax in the middle, and then at the back you've got the guys with no armour. But still able to fight because they've got the pike. And what's the other point? Oh yeah, and the other thing, when you read the ancient histories, they talk about how the phalanx is relatively safe from missiles, because you've got this giant hedge of pikes overhead, and apparently the missiles didn't actually affect them that badly. So that kind of negated the use of the skirmishers, who then, when they retreat to the back, and then you outnumber their the hoplites, or the main infantry. So it's not a big deal. This is I'm sure this has probably been done in lots of different history books, but it's something that never occurred to me until I was fiddling about with these different base, or different number of figures per base. I think that's basically how they did it. And they could, on the flat ground anyway, they could beat anyone that way. Simply because, say this chunk, this third of other armies, wasn't much use against them. The missiles weren't much use in the advance, and when they got close, these had to run to the back. They couldn't do any good. Well, no good. And given the sort of 3 to 2 ratio, 3 to 2 odds in the main ruck at the when the two sides met. So I don't know. That's just a little thought on the Macedonian phalanxes, why they were so useful, except against the Romans. Yep, I think that's it. Actually, that's all. See you in a bit.